2 months after my retirement celebration dinner, my doctor called me on a Tuesday morning and said, "Frank, I need to see you in person today. Please don't mention this call to your daughter." He paused, and I could hear him choosing his words carefully. "I overheard something at the dinner that you need to know about before you sign anything." I almost asked him what he meant, but something in his voice, Dr. James Holloway, who had been my physician for 19 years, who had held my hand when I got Linda's cancer diagnosis, who had never called me outside of scheduled appointments. Something in that voice told me not to ask questions over the phone. I told him I'd be there by noon. "My name is Frank Morrison. I'm 63 years old. For 31 years, I worked as a licensed electrician in Atlanta, Georgia, and I built my business the slow, honest way, one job at a time, one referral at a time, one reinvested dollar at a time. By the time I retired last spring, Morrison Electric had 12 full-time employees and a client list that covered most of Cobb County. I'd also spent 20 years quietly buying and rehabbing rental properties when the opportunity came. 4 of them now, scattered across the North Atlanta suburbs. Nothing flashy. 2-bedroom houses, good neighborhoods, solid tenants. Each one paid off, or nearly paid off. Together, they were worth somewhere in the range of $1.4 million. Linda and I had built all of it together. She handled the books, kept the rental accounts, knew every tenant by name, and remembered their kids' birthdays. She died 26 months ago. Pancreatic cancer 14 weeks from diagnosis to the end. The retirement I'd planned for the two of us became something I had to figure out how to do alone. My daughter Rachel was 35. She lived 20 minutes away in Marietta with her husband Marcus Webb, who ran what he described as a real estate investment consulting firm. He'd been describing it that way for 4 years, without any visible evidence of income. Rachel worked as an office manager for a dental practice. She made decent money. Marcus made excuses. My son Tyler was 29. He'd moved back home 8 months ago after losing his apartment lease. Temporarily, he said. His girlfriend Kayla had moved in 2 months after that. I hadn't been asked about Kayla. She just appeared one morning at my kitchen table eating cereal and watching something on her phone, and that was that. Tyler was not a bad person. He was unfocused. He worked occasional shifts at a home improvement store, played video games until 2 in the morning, and treated my house like a free extended stay hotel. I'd tried talking to him about it. He'd nod, say he was working on things. Bing would change. I kept telling myself he just needed time to find his footing. The retirement dinner had been Rachel's idea. 50 people at a nice steakhouse in Buckhead, her and Marcus's treat. I was touched by the gesture. Rachel gave a speech about what I'd built, about her mother, about how proud she was. I actually cried a little. It felt like exactly the kind of evening Linda would have wanted for me. That was 2 months before Dr. Holloway's phone call. I drove to his office that Tuesday with the windows down, something I always do when I need to think. His practice was in a low-rise building off Roswell Road. His receptionist brought me straight back without making me wait. He closed the door behind us and didn't sit down. "James," I said, "what's going on?" He was 61, round-faced, silver-haired, the kind of doctor who still made eye contact when he talked to you. He sat on the edge of his desk and looked at me, the way he'd looked at me the morning he told me about Linda. "I debated calling you for 2 months," he said. "I want you to know that. I kept telling myself it wasn't my place. Tell me." He was at the retirement dinner. Not as an official guest, he and his wife had been seated at a table near the back, invited by one of my old foremen whose wife knew Rachel. He'd gone to use the restroom during dessert, and had to pass through a small anteroom near the private dining corridor. The door to a secondary room was pulled almost shut but not latched. He heard Rachel's voice first, then Marcus. He reached into his desk drawer and set his phone face up between us. "I recorded it," he said. "I know how that sounds. My wife noticed I'd been gone a long time and she texted me. My phone was already recording a voice memo I'd started earlier that day. I use it to dictate patient notes sometimes, and I didn't realize it was still running when I stopped in the corridor. I didn't know what I had until I listened back 3 days later." He pressed play. Marcus's voice came through clearly, unhurried, confident. The voice of a man who thought he was in a private room. 6 months is enough time. Once he signs the POA, we move fast. The Roswell property first, then the Smyrna one. Those two alone cover what we need. Rachel's voice, lower. You're sure the language is broad enough? Standard durable power of attorney with property management authority. His lawyer won't flag it if we frame it as estate simplification. Tell him it's what your mom would have wanted, that she'd want the properties managed without him having to deal with all of it alone. Rachel was quiet for a moment. What about Tyler? Marcus again. Tyler gets told he's inheriting the business side. Keep him busy, keep him distracted. By the time he figures it out, the deed transfers are done and recorded. What if Dad asks questions about the sale? We handle it the same way. Market timing, tax efficiency, reducing his stress load. He's 63 and just lost his wife. He's not going to dig deep into the paperwork if we're framing it as doing him a favor. A pause. Then Rachel, softly. The money goes into the offshore account first. Right. And then we deal with the rest from there. The rest. I didn't ask Dr. Holloway what the rest meant. I had a clear enough picture. He stopped the recording. His hands were folded in his lap. He wasn't watching my face, and I was grateful for that. 58 seconds of audio, less than a minute. I sat in that chair and aged about 5 years. Can you send me that file? I said. My voice came out flat, like someone else's. Already done, he said. I sent it the moment you walked through the door. Check your phone. There it was. Audio file, 2 months old, time-stamped the night of my retirement dinner. The night Rachel gave that speech. The night I'd cried. James, I said. I know. Thank you for calling me. He exhaled slowly. I'm sorry it took me this long. I'm sorry it's this kind of news. I drove home on autopilot. The highway was familiar and I didn't register any of it. My house came into view and I sat in the driveway for 4 minutes before I went inside. Tyler was on the couch. Kayla was in the kitchen. The television was on at a volume that meant nobody was actually listening to it. Hey, Dad, Tyler said without looking up. Rachel called earlier. She said something about you meeting with a financial guy this week, about the estate stuff. I said nothing. She said it was just routine. Something about making things simpler since Mom's gone. I walked past him to my home office and locked the door. For the next 3 hours, I sat at my desk and wrote everything down. Not because I needed to remember it, but because writing it gave me something to do with my hands. I wrote down every financial request that had come from Rachel and Marcus in the past 2 years. The $22,000 loan for Marcus's consulting office build-out, still unpaid. The $14,000 check I'd written toward their car because Rachel said they were underwater on a trade-in. The $10,000 in what Marcus had called a bridge investment opportunity that I'd been too embarrassed to ask about since. Add it all up and I'd put roughly $46,000 into that marriage on top of everything I'd done for Rachel her whole life. I pulled up my browser and searched estate planning attorney Atlanta. I found a firm called Parker and Associates on Peachtree Industrial. Reviews mentioned a partner named David Park, who specialized in asset protection for business owners and retirees. They had an opening at 8 the next morning. I took it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed and listened to the recording 4 more times in the dark, and each time it was like hearing it for the first time. He's 63 and just lost his wife. He's not going to dig deep into the paperwork. I thought about the night Linda died and how Rachel had sat beside me in the hospital corridor and held my hand and said, "Dad, you're not alone. We're going to get through this together." I'd believed her completely. David Park was 45 years old, calm, measured, the kind of attorney who asks questions before offering any opinions. I sat across from him and told him everything in order, played the recording, showed him my written notes, explained the POA that was apparently being prepared for me to sign. He listened. When I finished, he uncapped his pen. "Mr. Morrison," he said, "has anyone presented you with power of attorney documents yet?" "Not yet." "Good. That means we have time to do this correctly. I'm going to walk you through what we're going to build, and then I'm going to explain exactly why what they were planning would have worked if you hadn't found out." He spent 40 minutes explaining. A durable power of attorney with broad property management language would have given Marcus the legal authority to sell, transfer, refinance, or encumber any real property on my behalf. In Georgia, if the document was properly executed and notarized, and I was of sound mind when I signed it, the resulting transactions would be extremely difficult to unwind. A buyer purchasing a property from someone acting under valid POA would almost certainly be a protected third party. By the time I realized what had happened, the Roswell house and the Smyrna house could already be sold, and the money moved. The offshore account comment told him the rest of the story. That money wasn't coming back. "What do I do?" I said. "We build a wall," he said. "Today." He outlined the structure, an irrevocable trust to hold all 4 properties. He would remain the trustee during his lifetime with full benefit, but the power to transfer the properties would require approval of an independent co-trustee, a role David's firm would fill. No single person would be able to sell or transfer without both signatures. Additionally, he recommended updating all beneficiary designations on my financial accounts, revising my will, and documenting my complete mental competency with a formal evaluation to preempt any future attempt to challenge my decision-making capacity. His fee for the full package was $14,000. I'd lost $46,000 to Rachel and Marcus already, and hadn't gotten anything for it. $14,000 to protect one. $4 million in assets felt like the best investment I'd ever made. "Let's get started," I said. We spent 2 hours that morning going through the initial documents. David was thorough and patient. He explained every paragraph in plain language and made sure I understood what I was authorizing. I left with homework, a list of account numbers, deed copies, insurance policies I needed to gather, and an appointment for 48 hours later to finalize everything. I drove home and found Marcus's car in my driveway. He was in the living room with Tyler and Kayla. All 3 of them were relaxed, casual, the way people look when they've been waiting for a while and have gotten comfortable. Marcus stood when I came in. Big smile. Firm handshake. "Hey, Pops. Thought I'd swing by. Rachel's working late, but she wanted me to drop something off." He held up a manila folder. "Just some paperwork, the estate simplification thing we mentioned." I took the folder, didn't open it. "I'll look it over," I said. "It's pretty straightforward." David Park drew it up. Actually, not David Park. We used a firm over in Sandy Springs. But it's standard language. Just gives Rachel and me the ability to handle your property affairs so you're not stuck doing it all yourself. Given everything with your heart last year, we figured it was time. My heart. I'd had a minor arrhythmia episode 14 months ago. 1 hospitalization, 1 night, a medication adjustment, no recurrence. Rachel had been in the room when Dr. Holloway explained it was manageable. Marcus had apparently filed it away for future use. "I'll look it over," I said again. His smile stayed in place, but his eyes did something different, something calibrating. "Of course. Take your time, though the firm did mention some of the property tax deadlines coming up, so sooner is better if you can. No rush, just better to have these things in place." I thanked him and walked to my office and closed the door and stood there holding the folder until I heard his car leave. Then I opened it. It was exactly what David Park had described. Durable power of attorney, property management authority, broad language, Rachel Morrison Webb and Marcus T. Webb as joint agents. Signature line at the bottom, notary block. A cover letter explaining that this was just a way to simplify my estate management and reduce my administrative burden during my retirement years. I set it in my desk drawer and went back to gathering the documents David had asked for. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my own family without them knowing I was watching. I had learned to observe. Marcus came by twice more with gentle questions about when I'd had a chance to look at the paperwork. Rachel called every few days. Her conversations had a new texture, warmer than usual, attentive, full of small questions about how I was eating and sleeping and feeling. She suggested we have dinner together on Saturday. She brought flowers. Tyler, for his part, had no idea. He was still on the couch, still working his part-time shifts, still asking me occasionally if I could spot him gas money or cover a delivery order. But he was being told a different story. I knew because one afternoon I heard him on the phone in the kitchen, talking to someone in a low, excited voice. "Dad's finally going to let Rachel help manage the properties." "Yeah, man. She said I'd get the business side of things, like the electrical company. She's going to set it up." He thought he was getting Morrison Electric. Rachel had told him that to keep him cooperative and quiet. He had no idea that the real plan left him with exactly nothing. Day 14. David called to confirm the trust was fully filed and recorded. The co-trustee structure was in place. Everything was documented. The competency evaluation I'd done with an independent physician was clean and on file. "Your assets are protected, Mr. Morrison," he said. "If anyone attempts a transfer or sale, It triggers an automatic notification to our firm and requires our approval before it can proceed. I thanked him and sat for a while at my desk. Linda's photo was on the bookshelf. She was laughing at something off camera, the way she always looked in photos because she hated posing and the best ones were always candids. I thought about what she would say. I thought she would probably say something practical and devastating in equal measure, which was her way. Then I called Rachel and asked her to come over Saturday afternoon. "Bring Marcus," I said. She sounded pleased. "Great, Dad. Should I bring lunch?" "That would be nice," I said. Saturday came. They arrived at 12:30 with sandwiches from a deli Rachel knew I liked. Tyler and Kayla were home. I'd asked them to stay, which was unusual enough that Tyler had looked at me twice when I said it. We sat in the living room. I'd arranged my reading chair slightly apart from the couch, which put me at a slight remove from the four of them. A small thing, but I wanted to be standing in front, not sitting in the middle. Marcus was talking about a new consulting client. Rachel was arranging sandwiches on the coffee table. Tyler was showing Kayla something on his phone. I said, "I need to share something with all of you." They looked up. 2 months ago, at my retirement dinner, Dr. James Holloway overheard a conversation. He was in the corridor near the back dining room. He had his phone out, and it was running a voice recorder. He didn't realize it until 3 days later. Rachel's face went very still. "He sent me the audio file. I've listened to it a number of times. I'd like you to hear it too." I pressed play on my phone and set it on the coffee table. Marcus's voice filled the room. 6 months is enough time. Once he signs the POA, we move fast. The Roswell property first, then the Smyrna one. Rachel's color drained. Marcus sat forward. Tyler looked at his sister. The recording played through. "Tell him it's what your mom would have wanted. He's not going to dig deep into the paperwork if we're framing it as doing him a favor. The money goes into the offshore account first." I stopped it. The room was quiet for 4 seconds. Then Tyler said, "Rachel, what is that?" Marcus recovered first. He held up both hands. "Frank, I understand how that sounds. That was a private conversation taken completely out of context. Rachel and I were exploring options, talking through possibilities. We never intended—" I said, "Marcus, there is no context that changes what I heard." "Dad." Rachel's voice was barely audible. "You used your mother," I said. "You told me bringing her up would help. You rehearsed it." "That's not—" Tyler stood up. He was looking at his sister with an expression I'd never seen on him before. He said, "You told me I was getting the business. You said Dad was setting it up." She said nothing. "He was supposed to be kept busy," I said, reading from memory. "Keep him distracted. By the time he figures it out, the deed transfers are done." Tyler turned and walked out of the room. I heard his bedroom door close. Not slammed, just closed, which was somehow worse. Kayla sat very still with her hands in her lap. Marcus stood. He was switching modes. I could see it moving from damage control to something harder. "Frank, you have to understand what it looks like from our position. You're sitting on over $1 million in real estate and you have no estate plan, no management structure, and a heart condition that you've been downplaying. We were trying to protect your assets," I said, "by moving them to an offshore account." His jaw tightened. "I've already met with an attorney," I said. "A firm called Parker and Associates. David Park drew up an irrevocable trust 4 days ago. All 4 properties are in it. I am the sole trustee, with an independent co-trustee required for any transfers. I've updated every beneficiary designation on every account I own. My will has been rewritten. A formal competency evaluation is on file with 3 independent physicians. There is nothing left to take." Rachel made a sound that might have been the start of a word and stopped. Marcus was very still. "You can't just cut us out. We're your family." "You cut yourselves out," I said. "You made that decision in a restaurant corridor 2 months ago. I'm just acknowledging it." Rachel said, "Dad, please." She was crying now. "I'm so sorry. I don't know how it got to this. I was scared, okay? I was scared after Mom died, and I was scared watching you alone in this big house, and Marcus said there was a way to help, and I looked at my daughter's face. I looked at it for a long time. I thought about how much of what I was seeing was real, and how much was the same performance I'd seen her give in that office doorway when she was 15 and had wrecked the car and needed me not to be angry. I said, 'Rachel, Every dollar I've ever spent on you was given freely and with love. That was always true. What Marcus planned to do with those properties was not a scared choice. It was a calculated one. And you knew. She looked at the floor. Marcus picked up his keys. He pointed at me, actually pointed and said, "This is going to cost you more than you know. You're choosing a lawyer over your own daughter." I said, "I'm choosing what I built over someone who wanted to steal it. Those are different things." He walked out. Rachel sat for another minute without moving. Then she followed him. She didn't say goodbye. The front door opened and closed. I heard their car back out and leave. The house was quiet. I stood in my own living room and breathed. Tyler came out of the hallway. He was still in his socks. He sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the coffee table where the sandwiches were still laid out in their deli paper. He said, "I'm an idiot." I said, "You didn't know." "I should have." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I should have asked more questions when Rachel started being all nice and helpful about everything. She's not like that unless she wants something." He looked up at me. "Dad, I didn't know anything about this." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry I've been the way I've been. Living here, not paying rent, not doing anything. That's not right either. That's just a smaller version of the same thing." I didn't argue with him. He said, "I'm going to find an apartment. I'll start looking this week." I told him 30 days was fair. He nodded like he'd expected that. "Yeah, okay, that's fair." Kayla appeared in the doorway. She said, "For what it's worth, I told Tyler 6 months ago this family dynamic wasn't healthy. I just want that on record." I almost smiled. The next 30 days were their own kind of difficult. Marcus sent a letter through his own attorney. Not an actual legal firm, I later learned, but someone he'd found online asserting that the trust was created under duress and that the power of attorney I'd been presented with represented a legitimate estate planning instrument. David Park responded with 4 sentences in the audio file, and that was the last I heard from Marcus's attorney. Rachel called twice. The first call was more crying and the word unfair said many times. I listened. I didn't respond to the fairness argument. I told her I loved her and I always would, and that those were 2 separate things from what I was doing with my estate. She hung up angry. The second call was different, quieter. She told me that Marcus had moved some money out of their joint account into an account she didn't have access to, and that she didn't know what was in the offshore account, or how much was there, or whose name it was under. She said she thought she understood now that she had been useful to him in a way she hadn't fully seen while she was inside it. I listened to that call for a long time. I didn't forgive her. I didn't tell her we were fine, but I told her to talk to her own attorney, someone she chose herself and paid for herself, and to figure out what she actually had and what she actually owed before she made any decisions about anything. She said, "Do you think you'll ever trust me again?" I said, "I don't know, but I know that question can't be answered right now." Tyler moved out on day 24. He'd found a studio apartment in Smyrna, cheap but decent. He'd picked up extra shifts at the store and had already talked to my former office manager about whether there was any part-time work in estimating or scheduling. I'd told my manager to take him seriously and let the work speak for itself. No favors beyond the introduction. The morning Tyler left, he loaded his truck and then stood on the front porch for a minute. He said, "I know I wasted a lot of time here." I said, "You also have a lot of time left. Use it differently." He shook my hand. Then he hugged me, which he hadn't done in probably 4 years. Kayla waved from the truck. I waved back. 6 weeks after that Saturday, I was sitting on my back porch at 6 in the morning with coffee. The light was doing that thin gold thing it does in Atlanta in the fall, cutting through the pin oaks at a long angle. Linda had loved the back porch. We'd eaten breakfast out here almost every weekend for 20 years. I'd started eating breakfast out here again. My phone buzzed. Text from David Park. "Final recorded copies of all trust documents are in your secure client portal. You are fully protected. Let me know if anything comes up." Another buzz. Tyler. "Started the estimating work last week. James says I'm decent at it. Thanks for the intro." Another. Dr. Holloway. "Checking in. Coffee this week?" I'd started having coffee with James Holloway on Wednesday mornings. His wife Margaret joined us sometimes. They'd been married 34 years and they were easy company, the kind of people who had figured out how to sit quietly in the same room and still be in a conversation. It reminded me of what Linda and I had been like. I had also, 6 weeks before, accepted an invitation from a woman named Patricia Owens to help with a weekly workshop at the Cobb County Senior Collaborative. Patricia ran the program, which helped older adults with financial literacy, how to read a utility bill, how to spot a scam, basic budgeting. She had called me because someone on her board knew I was retiring and thought my background might be useful. I'd almost said no. I was glad I hadn't. Patricia was 60 years old, recently divorced, and had spent 15 years running nonprofits in Atlanta. She was organized in a way that could seem intimidating until you realized she was equally organized about laughing at herself. The first day I showed up, she handed me a binder and said, "I made this assuming you'd know nothing about running a workshop. Tell me if I'm wrong, and I'll be impressed." She was not wrong. She was also not unimpressed. I was not yet sure what Patricia and I were. I was sure that I looked forward to Wednesdays in a way I hadn't looked forward to a day in a long time. My phone was quiet now. Coffee was warm. The oaks were doing their slow October thing, dropping single leaves with no urgency. Morrison Electric was running fine without me. I'd promoted my senior foreman and given him a graduated buyout structure that would make him the full owner in 7 years. The rental properties were occupied, maintained, earning. The trust was ironclad. I had one notification left. A voicemail, left yesterday, from a number I didn't recognize. I'd almost deleted it. I pressed play instead. "Dad, it's Rachel." I hadn't saved her new number yet. "I know you don't have to listen to this, and I know things aren't. I just wanted to say that I talked to an attorney. My own. She found the accounts Marcus set up. I didn't know all of it, Dad. I knew enough, and that's bad enough. And I'm not asking you to let me off the hook for what I knew. But I want you to know that what he told me it would be that you'd never find out, that you'd be better off, that we'd use the money to help the family eventually. I believed him, because I wanted to believe him. Because I was scared and stupid, and I loved Marcus, and I let that make me someone I shouldn't have been." She paused. "I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did. Okay, I love you." The voicemail ended. I set my phone face down on the porch table and looked at the oaks. Here's what nobody prepares you for when you're building something. Not the business, not the properties, not the accounts. When you're building a life, nobody tells you that the people you do it for might be the ones who eventually test whether you actually value it. Nobody tells you that protecting yourself can feel like abandoning someone at the same time. Nobody tells you the two things can both be true. I had not responded to Rachel's voicemail. Not yet. I didn't know if yet would become eventually, or if eventually would become never. I knew that some betrayals leave a permanent mark, and that the mark doesn't mean you stop loving someone. It means you stop pretending love is the same as trust. Those are different words. Linda knew the difference. I was learning it late. What I did know was this. 31 years ago, I started with a van, a set of tools I'd bought secondhand, and a reputation that was entirely ahead of me. I built something, not because I was exceptional, but because I showed up every day and did the work, and didn't lie to anyone about what I was or what I had. That's the whole story of Morrison Electric. That's the whole story of 4 paid-off houses in the suburbs of Atlanta. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, and nobody was going to take it. I picked up my phone and texted Patricia. "Wednesday still good? I think I can help with the property section this week. I actually know something about that." She responded in 45 seconds. "Obviously. Bring coffee. The stuff from the place on Johnson Ferry, not the stuff from the office machine." I went inside and started getting ready for the day. I fed the bird feeder Linda had put in the backyard, which I had kept stocked for 2.5 years, mostly out of habit, and then at some point out of actual preference. There was a pair of cardinals that showed up every morning. Tyler had named them before he left. Harold and Margaret. I did not tell Dr. Holloway and his wife this. The house was quiet. My house. Every room in it, every piece of furniture, every deed to every property, every dollar in every account. Mine. Built slowly, honestly, over a lifetime. I was 63 years old, and I had just started to understand what I'd actually made. If you found value in this story, please subscribe to Shadow Vengeance and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell us in the comments, do you think people can truly change? Or does betrayal reveal who someone always was? We read every response. And to hear the next story, click on the box to your left.